We've got some spicy decks this week. My name is Matt. Let's look at the Legacy Metagame from the first week of March. The metagame has shifted slightly when we look at leagues. As always, league results are only representative of what is winning in leagues, but we don't know what the overall field looked like or what each player played against. However, I often find that leagues are a leading indicator of where the overall Magic Online metagame shifts are going to end up being. Demure Scaminator continues to be the top deck, making up nearly 11% of the 5-0 results. A quarter of these decks, so a quarter of the Demure Scaminator decks, splashed white for Triumph of St. Catherine and Swords to Plowshares out of the sideboard. We first saw this list when Uberdub posted a 5-0 Esper Scaminator list that we discussed on last week's video. The Bant Beans lists are still being explored right now that Warhammer 40k is on Magic Online finally. These decks made up about 7.5% of the 5-0 lists, but there is a wide range between these lists, with a variation in the number of splash colors, the threat, and removal composition. I think we'll see these versions of these decks become less greedy as they evolve, because the greedier 4 to 5 color Bant decks are much more vulnerable to Wasteland, which is still being played in almost every other top deck, basically every other top deck except for Doomsday. Grixis Delver dropped down to under 7%. Still a solid deck, but it's losing some popularity this week. Stiflenaught and Lands both have been on an upward trajectory, which is pretty cool to see. Cryptic Coat and Doorkeeper Thrall are interesting additions to the Stiflenaught deck, adding new ways to cheat Phyrexian Dreadnought into play while still having additional utility outside of that specific interaction. Doomsday was the most successful dedicated combo deck with about 4% of the results. Turbo Goblins and Sultai Beans were underrepresented this week relative to what we've come to expect. And just before we move on, Sultai Scam has been picking up some steam this week, with 4 copies putting up results just in this week alone. A player called Daganev took down the Challenge 64 on March 3rd with Sultai Scam. I don't typically examine the winning decks from challenges, but I wanted to spend a few minutes exploring this deck anyways. I believe this deck was pioneered by Pokemoki in mid-February. It's kind of a hybrid between Sultai Beans and Demure Scam, but instead of skewing aggressive like the Delver Scam or the Demure Scaminator decks that include a combo, this deck skews a lot more controlling with Witherbloom Command and Uro to play an effective control game. Drawing inspiration from the Sultai Beans deck, this deck plays a split of Daze and Stifle to keep the opponent guessing, figuring out what to play around if they can play around anything at all. This is probably like the place to be if you're looking for a controlling Scam deck, and it has been performing quite well. It just wasn't very popular up until this sort of past week or so. The next deck I want to explore is this Jund Green Sun Zenith deck, piloted by Masamuro to a 5th place finish in the Challenge 32 on March 2nd. There are so many cool cards in this deck, but it basically looks like a traditional mid-range deck with some acceleration in like Mox Diamond and Ignoble Hierarch, along with a lot of efficient creatures, some Thoughtseizes, and some removal spells. Green Sun Zenith and Breakout both allow you to find the best creature for the situation, with Moloch providing both removal and a mana sink into the late game. Deeproot Wayfinder is another cool card in this deck. It's got some really interesting synergies with Mox Diamond and Fetch Lands, while obviously being super powerful with Wasteland. I do really like seeing the diversity in the metagame with a non-blue fair deck, like a non-blue deck that has no combo, like instant kill combo in it. It's really cool to see that. In prelims and challenges, we see a similar metagame spread to what we saw in the league results. Top decks this week are Demure Scaminator at 10% of the field, overperforming expectations by nearly 30%. Grixis Delver at roughly 8.25% with a slightly positive result. Lands continues to perform highly, making up 5.5% of the field and overperforming expectations by about 65%. We also see positive results from the Painter decks, including the Agatha's Soul Cauldron package, so Painter decks that have the Soul Cauldron and then Phyrexian Devourer combo in them. We see those decks having done reasonably, along with Boros Initiative, Delver Scam, Sultai Scam, and the Green-White X Depths decks. Our bottom performers of the week here were Reanimator, Doomsday, Creative Technique, and Rakdos Cauldron, so kind of like the Painter deck, but without the Painter combo. These are decks that are playing, Chaos Defiler, Orcish Bowmasters, and then a lot of the time Broadside Bombardier, so kind of like a hybrid between Painter and like Moonstompy. Pretty cool deck. I've played these a little bit. I like them. Combo and combo adjacent decks have not been really doing very well lately, sort of with the exception of Dumira Scaminator, which is honestly probably the deck that's pushing out dedicated combo decks. We're definitely seeing some adjustments in the metagame since 40k arrived on Magic Online, with Triumph and Chaos Defiler both seeing significant amounts of play, and Scarab Swarm and Moloch each seeing a little bit of play. I haven't seen any Poxwalkers decks break out yet, but it might just be a matter of time, hard to say. There's one final deck that I want to explore before we wrap up today, which is this Grixis Delver Scam deck. This list was piloted by Jake TMS to a 3-1 record and a prelim, so a respectable but not like a crazy result by any means. It basically takes the Grixis Delver shell and cuts baubles, a couple lands, some Murktide Regents, and a few removal spells to fit in playsets of Grief, Troll, and Reanimate. This deck has been popping up like every once in a while for the last couple of weeks, so it's definitely something to keep an eye on. DRC, Delver, and the Scam package all lend themselves really well to this aggressive Wasteland Daze style of gaming, so it makes a ton of sense that you could sort of fit all of this together into one deck. I don't know if this is better than Grixis Delver or if it's better than Delver Scam. There are some upsides and downsides to this, and the question's really like, are the trade-offs worth it? Or, is the juice worth the squeeze, I guess? Because I think losing Murktide Regent's a pretty big deal in Delver mirrors, but obviously the Grief package is really good against combo and then at destabilizing control decks, and against some of the Snompy decks, so really hard to say. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this interesting and informative. If you want to see the combined metagame breakdown from February, check out Last Week in Legacy, the playlist that I've got linked right here. Or if you want to see more, subscribe to see new videos when they come out.